We now turn to a landmark Supreme Court decision with stark implications for American elections. Today, the court's conservative supermajority struck down a Louisiana voting map as unconstitutional, finding that lawmakers, quote, illegally used race when drawing a new majority black district. The 6-3 decision split along predictable ideological lines. The majority opinion, written by Justice Samuel Alito, asserted that the ruling preserves a central tenet of the Voting Rights Act. His opinion reads, quote, allowing race to play any part in government decision-making represents a departure from the constitutional rule that applies in almost any other context. In a scathing dissent, which she read from the bench, Justice Elena Kagan slammed the majority for laying the groundwork for what she called the largest reduction in minority representation since the era following Reconstruction. Justice Kagan wrote that the majority's ruling licenses states to, quote, dilute minority citizens' voting power. And while the majority claims that this is merely an update to the law, Justice Kagan, writing for the 3 Democratic appointees, disagreed sharply, maintaining that the decision, quote, eviscerates the law. She called the decision, quote, the latest chapter in the majority's now completed demolition of the Voting Rights Act. During oral arguments back in October, Justice Kagan asked Janae Nelson of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, who represented a group of black voters, what the stakes were in this case. Take a listen.
What would the results on the ground be?
I think the results would be pretty catastrophic. If we take Louisiana as one example, every congressional member who is black was elected from a VRA opportunity district. We only have the diversity that we see across the South, for example, because of litigation that forced the creation of opportunity districts under the Voting Rights Act.
Today's ruling is a sad departure from decades of precedent, and it is also a very sad development for a law that was a signature key accomplishment of the civil rights era, landmark legislation that sought to protect minorities from discriminatory voting practices. Critically, today's ruling is the latest in a series of decisions from the High Court that over the last decade have incrementally hobbled the Voting Rights Act. Louisiana, a state with a sizable black population, will likely now lose one majority black Democratic district. And the ruling also opens the door for other states to redraw their congressional maps ahead of an already contentious midterm election year. Today, lawmakers spoke out about the ruling.
This decision today by the Supreme Court is a slap in the face. This is one huge step backwards for racial justice and for the health of our democracy.
It is an attack on a crown jewel of our democracy.
It's not Donald Trump or his Supreme Court majority that should be the ones to decide who gets to represent you in Congress. It's the American people.
Joining me now to break all of this down is the Reverend Al Sharpton, host of Politics Nation here on MS Now. He is also the president and founder of the National Action Network. Also with us tonight is Leah Lippman, a law professor at the University of Michigan, and my co-host on the Strict Scrutiny podcast. Rev, let's get right into it. The Voting Rights Act was already hobbled after years of the Supreme Court incrementally chipping away at it. What does this ruling mean for voting rights in the United States for African Americans and other minorities?
Well, it was hobbled. Now it's destroyed, in effect. And this shoots in the heart of voting rights and civil rights, because what they're saying is that you can no longer deal with the fact that there was racial exclusion, and therefore you must be able to hold people accountable for continuing a racially exclusive kind of policy. And if you mention race saying that it was being exclusionary, then you can't do it. Well, then how do you remedy the fact that we were, people act like we're asking for something.
Right.
We only are saying to remake what you did to us. That's an affirmative move was made against us.
So this is an important point. The map here was a remedial map drawn after Louisiana engaged in what the black voters termed a racial gerrymander and what a court found to be a racial gerrymander. And so the court ordered Louisiana to draw a new map that created an additional black opportunity voting district. And the court in this decision now says that the consideration of race in drawing that district is itself unconstitutional.
And what you then have the effect, so you have the huge population of blacks in Louisiana. We'll put y'all all in one district. And the ones of you that don't live in that district, you won't matter anyway.
Yeah.
And so we can end up with several white congressmen from Louisiana and one black. And that's fair and equal because you can't bring up race. And that's what they will try to do all over the country is lump one district, two at the most, and have the rest of the state in smaller populated districts. Because you're not even talking about the same population. Smaller populated districts.
Right.
So in effect, you will have the number of blacks in Congress and in state legislatures and in city councils minimum. So we will have minimum input, but we're going to have to pay the same taxes.
And this really prompted outrage from inside the chamber. So Justice Kagan chose to read her dissent from the bench. It's a very unusual step. Insiders in the courtroom said that she struck a defiant tone and was clearly upset when she was reading this. And she was especially aggrieved when she read the parts where she disagreed with the majority's claim that they were, quote unquote, preserving the central tenets of the VRA. Is this a preservation of the Voting Rights Act, or has the court effectively overruled Voting Rights Act, decades of precedents, and basically hobbled this statute?
I think they've effectively nullified it. Justice Alito's majority opinion made it all but impossible to establish a violation of the Voting Rights Act, saying that in order for plaintiffs to succeed on a Section 2 claim to establish illegal racial discrimination in redistricting, they have to show that you can create an additional majority-minority district, including a majority black district, that would result in the same partisan breakdown as the state's chosen partisan breakdown, i.e. that the majority black district would have to vote Republican. This is, of course, describing a null set. So by making it impossible to establish a violation of the Voting Rights Act, he's all but nullified the law. Justice Kagan obviously read her dissent with passion. In the oral argument later that morning, she said, "I'm losing my voice. I lost my voice," indicating maybe how emphatic she was.
All right. Rev, this ruling, many commentators have noted, will likely create new GOP districts across the South. The New York Times mapped this out, what this region might look like. Here's what the map currently looks like, with Democrats holding around 24 seats. And here is the plausible redistricting scenario without the input of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. It shows Republicans gaining 12 more seats. Can we expect other states to begin pushing to take advantage of this ruling ahead of the midterms? Florida has already passed a law through its legislature to redistrict their seats going forward. They've already...
I think you absolutely can look for other states to try to take advantage of it. I think that this is something that was projected when many of us were saying that don't ignore Project 2025. They're doing exactly what they said they were going to do. And those of us in the civil rights community that was warning of this, we were alarmists. Well, we're here now.
Yeah.
And we're now going to have to deal with the fact. And let's remember that blacks and whites went to the South and fought to get the Voting Rights Act. Goodman, Cheney, and Swerner, two Jews and a black, were killed for fighting for the Voting Rights Act. So was Viola Luisa. So this was not just blacks saying this. These were blacks and whites saying, let's uphold democracy. And here we are getting ready to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the country. And going in, we're reminding blacks, oh, you can't bring up race. You're not equal. In fact, you weren't even independent in 1776.
Leah, I want to come back to something that you said about Justice Alito's majority opinion. As you mentioned, he seemed especially concerned about the question of polarized voting and partisanship in these redistricting cases. And he seemed to be saying that while partisanship is fine, it's fine to draw districts according to partisanship, it's not okay to rely on race. What's the relationship between race and partisan affiliation, though, in many of these areas in the South?
Race and party are very closely correlated. There's racially polarized voting. By some estimates, 70 to 80% of minority voters might be registered Democrats. And so the correlation between them makes it virtually impossible to disentangle them.
And he seemed to be saying that when these claims are presented as racial gerrymanders, in fact, they're just permissible partisan gerrymanders. Can they be both?
They can be both, and it can still be a racial gerrymander, even where a state says it is advancing partisan aims, because they are still suppressing and diluting the voting power of racial minorities. But essentially, Justice Alito gave them a green light to engage in partisan gerrymandering, and in so doing, dilute and suppress Black voting power.
Another member of the conservative bloc, Justice Thomas, said that he would have gone further and would say that the Voting Rights Act doesn't even apply in circumstances relating to districting at all. What do you make of that? Is that an invitation for new litigation to further hobble the Voting Rights Act?
Well, he said he would have gone further. He also indicated he was basically fine with the majority opinion, which would do well enough, since it would basically bring the redistricting litigation to a close. So while Justice Alito's majority opinion protested that they weren't ending the Voting Rights Act, Justice Thomas, as always, kind of let the cat out of the bag and said, no, we're basically ending any districting challenges under the Voting Rights Act, and that's a good thing.